Second part. Indications of motion reached Pick as he waited in a hall. We're on the move. Annette looked irritably at the boy, who couldn't conceal his excitement. You don't have to sound so happy about it. What do you think is going to become of us? Whatever it is, it'll be better than being eaten by bugs underground, little lady. Stop calling me little lady. Yes, your majesty. Pick replied, his voice rising to a high, snide tone. For starters, why don't we try asking that noble over there some questions? Excuse me, but what did you plan on doing with us? There was no answer. After leading the two of them to the first floor hall, Braylo had put his back to the wall and kept staring at the door before him without moving a muscle. What's this crap? A noble acting like he's a warrior or something? On hearing Pick's caustic remarks, Annette furrowed her brow. When they're afraid of getting hit from behind, the boy explained, human warriors keep their back to a wall and face the window or door like he is doing. Only, nobles don't do that. They don't need to, since they're immortal. But he's doing it, which means he's either an idiot or is an honest-to-goodness warrior. My money's on idiot. He gives me the creeps. Well, we'll be okay as long as you don't try anything funny. I figure they gotta be bringing us back to their leader. Probably get our blood sucked in the end, though. Stop it, Annette said, quivering with rage. You're such a disagreeable brat. I really can't stand it. I'll thank you to stand far enough away that I don't have to breathe you in. Fine by me. Pick made a slight bound of over 6 feet that left him standing by the window. Looking out the enormous pane of glass, he yawned widely. Pulling back his right hand to cover his mouth, he said, Getting tired. But I'm hungry, too. Say, mister, anywhere to get some grub around here? Having said that, Pick squinted his eyes. A certain sound had reached his ears. There was no need to strain his eyes again. The magic swords of their watchman, Zeno Braylo, had begun clattering together again. Aye, Pick said, and perhaps sensing something, he kept his voice low. Back over to the far wall. What? He asked because he hadn't expected the unsettling young nobleman to reply. Back over to the far wall, Braylo repeated. Shut up. I don't take orders from no noble. Pick felt a fear he couldn't properly describe, and in reaction to it his right arm swung into action. The gleam that sliced through the wind as it flew was just about to sink into the base of Braylo's neck when it vanished. It was a dart that had been taken from the board hanging between two of the windows. But one wave of Braylo's arm had deflected it, leaving it embedded in the floor. However, now Braylo was away from the wall, and he seemed intensely focused, as if the dart hadn't even existed in the first place. Almost as if brought forth by the pleasant rocking of the iron castle as it raced along. An eerie malevolence now began to fill the hall, and the gap between the supposedly locked door and its frame slowly widened. As soon as the tall figure in black came in, Pick felt his consciousness slip away. Page break. Something cold was placed on the boy's brow. Coolness spread throughout his body, and right above his head there glowed an exquisite face. D? Pick cried, and at the same time tears spilled from him. The one person they could depend on had returned. Strange thing you're hiding in here, the hoarse voice said meanly, but even that was a joy to hear. What are you doing here? The boy asked.
Well, we're the ones who got the train started, and it's our job to destroy the greater noble who's on it.
The boy bugged his eyes. After considering what the hoarse voice had said, Pick accepted it. Okay. In that case, you've got to find the little lady. A big guy dressed in black like you took her away. And that noble named Braylo went with him. Took her away. Yeah. Even now, I can't believe it. Pick shuddered. His fear and excitement had brewed chills. This guy stood a head taller than you. No, maybe even two. I don't know. He comes in, and right away that gloomy noble pulls his sword, tries to slice him up. The same ones that made all that rattling noise. No one would have figured him for having any special power or trick to him. Well, in less than 2 seconds, both pig stickers have been batted out his hands, and the jerk's being knocked on his ass. Barehanded. He takes the jerk and his sword's under one arm like they were light as paper mache. And then he comes at us. I jabbed a dart into his arm, but he didn't even blink. He didn't even look at the dart or me, like it had never been happened. But he scooped up the little lady and left. Neither me or her could even say a word, even though our bodies and tongues were working just fine. So what the hell was that guy? He didn't say anything. This question came from Dee. Though the boy tried not to look at him, he turned red at the mere sound of the hunter's voice. Nothing. Not a single word. All he did was stroll right in here, knock Braylo flat, and take off with the little lady. That's it. Almost like it was decided ahead of time that was all he'd do. Dee's left hand said as if it had just thought of something.
I can understand him carrying the girl off, but a noble too. Could be he knows what you're here for. You know, we really should have found him by day. But no use grumbling about that now.
Dee said, I hear the noble who built the Iron Castle even drank the blood of his own kind.
Not only that, but they say he chucked him in the fire after.
The hoarse voice added, and there was a certain buoyancy to its tone.
But this time, we best figure he's got another aim. Mainly, putting the blood of a greater noble into the veins of the nobles he drains. They'd come back with 100 times the strength of the one that got turned to ashes in the control room earlier. And all just to destroy you. Looks like we won't be getting any sleep the next couple of days.
Pick alone trembled at the left-hand snide remark, and while Dee's face was as gorgeous and expressionless as ever when he said, So 4 of them all told. The way he said, it sounded like it really didn't matter. The hoarse voice said,
Records say this train car had its own special guards. They're telling how many there might be in total. Might be as many as 10,000.
10,000, Pick said, showing his teeth.
Might be 1,000,000. Records say he was a pro at manipulating pocket dimensions. No doubt that's the reason we couldn't find him during the day.
Dee spun around and headed for the door. Wait. If you're going looking for the little lady, I'm going too, Pick said, hurriedly heading after Dee.
Neither you nor the girlie are this guy's concern. If you both survive till he's slain the greater noble, just consider that gravy.
But the little lady is with that noble. I'll just follow you.
You're one brave simpleton,
The hoarse voice jeered. If anyone else had been there to hear it, they would have been surprised at the warmth to be felt in its laugh.
First off, we've got to see what's happening to those other two.
Page break. An hour later, as the left hand looked down at the gory floor of the control room, its hoarse voice asserted,
Not here, it would seem.
Page break, indicated by a small cross. Annette felt like she was having an endless nightmare. The whole world was stained with blood. It was a crimson room. There were 4 men there. They formed an interesting tableau. A man in black, far larger than the others, had 1 nobleman under each arm, the ones who'd identified themselves as Gorshin and Benelli, and in his teeth he held another. Braylo had both eyes wide open, and his look could no longer be described as nihilistic. Bright blood dripped from where the teeth clamped the left nape of his neck, making gigantic blossoms on his upper body. An odd sound battered at Annette's ears. Slurp, slurp, slurp. No, Annette groaned, her hands long since covering her ears. Yet in them the same sound reverberated. Slurp, slurp, slurp. It was a sound she'd already heard. Even after Braylo fell to the floor, the sound continued. The giant had Benelli under his right arm, and after raising him high, he pressed crimson lips to the nobleman's neck. In that dark, bearded face, 2 eyes burned like coals. There was a movement down by the giant's feet. Even Annette knew what had happened. The only reason she didn't react appropriately was due to common knowledge. Nobles don't drink the blood of other nobles. If drained, a noble would rise no more. Yet why did it appear that Braylo was going to get to his feet again? With the jerky motions reminiscent of a marionette, controlled by just a single string connected who knows where, Braylo was just straightening his knees when Benelli's body fell to the floor with a dull thud. His pale face met Annette's gaze. It was a rictus. Her mind began to flee. For her consciousness, it was but a moment. Page break indicated by a small cross. When she opened her eyes, she was lying on a bed. It wasn't the room she had just been in. Even the pampered Annette had never seen a bedroom this luxurious. Everything was made of gold, and lavishly set with jewels, yet it didn't seem the slightest bit gauche. Undoubtedly the work of a genius with sensibilities as fine as cut crystal. However, even though the room had changed, her terror had not. The figure towering before the bed hid his face with the collar of his cape and a scarf. But from the darkness, eyes ablaze with red looked down at Annette. You. Who are you? A fair amount of time had passed before she managed that question. Surprisingly enough, there was a reply. You can speak, can you? Said a voice every bit as manly and exquisite as that of the vampire hunter in black. Moreover, the atmosphere that billowed from the giant was different from that of the youthful hunter, heavy with stagnant death and the stink of blood. And yet, somehow it seemed pure compared to the other nobility. While she'd witnessed his terrible feeding on the other 3 noblemen, Annette felt that her terror wasn't connected to her own death. You are riding in a moving castle of my own creation. As you boarded with their permission, I am free to deal with you as I wish. As I did with those 3 pups. Pups. Those nobles. To Annette, Braylo and the others were nobles, and rightly the object of fear. One glare from them was enough to make her blood run cold. Yet this giant nonchalantly dismissed them as pups. The gruesome sight of him drinking their blood had been proof of that. Annette felt like no more than an insect led out before a wild beast. It was a wonder that she could even speak. What do you intend to do with me? Stay here for the time being. I forbid you to leave. You're not going to drink my blood, she said, a gentle relief spreading through her chest. At present I am sated. That relief turned to ice. My sleep was to continue for all eternity in this castle. Someone has prevented that. And it wasn't those pops. There was a pregnant pause from Annette. You know who it is, do you not? The other. The one who has such power. Such an aura makes even my heart beat faster. How sweet his blood must be. When you think of it, he is a most unfortunate man. For he has awakened me only to become my prey. And then the giant said, What's this? You're crying. No? The gleam in your eye is not that of grief. Are you happy? Ah. It is as I thought. He is that great of a man, is he? Great enough that one who has known me still embraces hope. Annette wiped away her tears. The giant was correct on all counts. You're right. He's here on this train. It's okay now. I'm not afraid of anything. That is good, said the giant, and his tone had no trace of mockery. Until this matter is settled, you should enjoy the journey. There's no telling how long it will last. And then his form appeared to waver for an instant before he stepped out the bedroom door. The door closed without a sound, and for a while Annette didn't move. And then she very carefully stepped to the floor. She was still fully dressed. Taking her shoes from the floor and putting them on, she turned her attention to all sides, and then quickly dashed to the door. When she grabbed the golden handle and pushed, the door immediately opened. Eek, she cried, her shriek sailing forward, then bouncing right back. The area beyond the door was filled with shadowy figures beyond number. They were men in grey capes. On their hips or backs they wore long swords. While some also held firearms, or weapons that looked to be heat rays. It was neither their bizarre air, nor their terrible weapons that caused Annette to recoil. All of them wore black masks over their heads. In the vicinity of their eyes, they burned with crimson. Those were the eyes of a noble. They pierced the girl with all the keenness of a blade. Annette felt as if she'd died. Pardon me. The steady voice slipped into the girl's ears, freeing her body from the grip of ice. Pushing her way through the men was a woman so beautiful it caused Annette's cheeks to instantly flush. Clad in a deep purple dress that obscured none of her sensual lines, her looks were so exquisite, even the glittering diamond necklace and golden bracelet she wore couldn't begin to compare. Greetings. I'm Countess Genevieve. Grand Duke Drago has requested I serve as your guardian. The words dripped seductively from the woman's crimson lips, as she made a light bow in greeting. So, the giants call Grand Duke Drago, Annette thought dimly. It's a pleasure to make your acquaintance. May I come in? Ah. Annette backed away out of reflex, watching as the Countess reached back and closed the door behind herself. The Countess walked right past Annette and over to a gorgeous cabinet, from which she took a golden liquor bottle and 2 glasses. You needn't fear me so. I won't suck your blood. The The glasses made a melodic sound as she set them down on a small marble table. It took Annette a few seconds to grasp the meaning of that startling remark. What did you just say? I informed you that I don't drink blood. Care for a drink? A pale hand extended a glass with fluid grace, and Annette accepted it without a word. You say you don't drink blood, but how? You are not a noble. No. My full name is Genevieve Vasa, and I am a noble by birth. Do you find a noble who doesn't drink blood odd? Annette didn't know what to say. If you find it funny, laugh. If you're sad, cry. The problem with humans is they're always so boring. Don't they know there are so many things in this world to be enjoyed? The question was posed with puzzlement, and not the least bit of malice, but it stirred anger in Annette's heart. What are you talking about? If we're dour, it's the fault of you nobles. By night you come into our villages and take our people, draining their blood, and turning them into your kind, and anyone who opposes you gets their heads lopped off on the spot. You cause fires and floods, and make the earth split wide. So how are we supposed to remain cheery? That may be, the Countess said, taking the glass from her lips and shrugging her shoulders. The gesture was so charming, Annette nearly smiled in spite of herself. An instant later, Annette's jaw dropped. The Countess's profile had been plastered with a severity that seemed that of someone else entirely. Even her voice had changed. That is correct, and that is why we had such hope for them. Hope. Yes, as test subjects. What do you mean by that? The girl asked, her mouth working of its own accord. Up until now, Annette had harbored even less interest in the nobility than the average person. She'd had no reason to care about them. In her home in Krishkin, mercenaries in her father's employ had guarded her, so she couldn't recall ever feeling the fear of the nobility experienced by other villagers. And after graduating from the village junior high school, at the age of 13, she'd immediately been enrolled in a boarding school in the capital for high school. In the capital, the threat of the nobility was so slight, it made the fear the others had felt in the village of Krishkin seem no more than a dream. And though there were those at school who showed a sincere interest in the lives and history of the nobility, and chose the scholarly path, Annette had decided from the very start to ignore all that. More than the nobility, it was country life that she wanted to distance herself from. So long as she lived in this world, the shadow of the nobility would menace her whether she liked it or not. Sooner or later she would run headlong into her destiny, but while she was in the capital she wanted to maintain as much distance as she could. And for a girl of her sheltered upbringing, that wasn't at all unusual. But no sooner had she left the capital than she was attacked in the rain, narrowly being saved through Dee's power. In a situation she could never have imagined in her life up until now, she'd fallen victim to successive tricks of fate that had ultimately seen her captured underground. Now a nobleman sat before the girl. The mud walls of her indifference crumbled, and on her face one might catch a glimpse of the interest in the nobility it had concealed. No. Even if one had no eyes to open, the truth would be plain to see. There was no denying that the Countess's strange cheerfulness and her admission to not drink blood had played a part in the girl's change of heart. In short, not all nobles thought only of keeping humanity under our control. Genevieve continued after a sip of wine. Though her tone was lifeless, the way she drank or held the glass in her fingers was the very pinnacle of refinement. Annette actually felt a little embarrassed. During our golden age, there was nothing the humans could do to us, yet their resistance never abated. And what it earned was not on the level of the earthquakes and storms you've just mentioned. In locations around the world, hundreds of thousands of humans were executed. Picture, if you will, watching someone you know being ground into mincemeat while still alive. Annette felt dizzy. The only thing that kept her from succumbing to it was the look of disgust on the face of the Countess. Did this noble woman sympathize with humanity? But then, even the least of human beings know that, do they not? Yet the fires of rebellion you felt toward us did not die out. Why the troubled face? Could it be you knew nothing of this? No. Yes. As the noble woman nodded without a trace of doubt, Annette had to divert her gaze. She was being fiercely buffeted by a certain emotion. Shame. At present, she heard the voice of the Countess only as a distant chiding. The nobility poured millennia of time, knowledge, effort, and power into mastering and eliminating the rebellious urges in your kind. They sought to kill your spirit. It ended in failure. Neither time nor fear was able to change humanity. Finally, the board of directors of the Noble Mental Research Center in the capital were forced to make a public, certain conclusion. Glancing at Annette, she continued, "You are familiar with it, are you not?" "No," she said, her voice no more than the buzzing of a mosquito. The Countess made an incredulous expression. "You don't know it. But you're a human, are you not?" Chapter 7, End.